Exodus chapter 37, the ark. Bezaleel made the ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. The inside and outside were plated with gold, and a molding of gold was put around it. 4 gold rings were cast for its 4 supports, 2 rings on one side, 2 on the opposite side. Poles of acacia wood were made and plated with gold. These poles were put through the rings on the sides of the ark for carrying it. The cover was made of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. 2 cherubim of beaten gold were made for the 2 ends of the cover. 1 cherub was at one end, the other at the other end, made of one piece with the cover at each end. The cherubim had their wings spread out above, sheltering the cover. They faced each other with their faces looking toward the cover. Excuse me. Where are you at, Lamentations? You're too far. It's in the front of your book. It's like the second chapter. You got Genesis and then Exodus. Okay, so you're in Leviticus. I think it's before that. Yeah, it's just before that. The chapter before that.
Right here.
Okay, so chapter 37 of Exodus. This one. Exodus 37. Rightly. Okay. The cherubim had their wings spread out above, sheltering the cover. They faced each other with their faces looking toward the cover of the table. The table was made of acacia wood, 2 cubits long, 1 cubit wide, and 1.5 cubits high. It was plated with pure gold, and a molding of gold was put around it. A frame a handbreadth high was also put around it, with a molding of gold around the frame. 4 rings of gold were cast for it and fastened at the 4 corners, one at each leg. The rings were alongside the frame as holders for the poles to carry the table. Those poles for carrying the table were made of acacia wood and plated with gold. The vessels that were set on the table, its plates and cups, as well as its pitchers and bowls for pouring libations, were made of pure gold. The menorah was made of pure beaten gold, its shaft and branches with its cups and knobs and petals springing directly from its 6 branches extended from its sides, 3 branches on one side and 3 on the other. On one branch there was 3 cups, shaped like almond blossoms, each with its knob and petals. On the opposite branch there were 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms, each with its knob and petals, and so for the 6 branches that extended from the menorah. On the menorah there were 4 cups. Listening? Shaped like almond blossoms with their knobs and petals. The 6 branches that went out from the menorah had a knob under each pair. The knobs and branches so sprang from it that the whole formed but a single piece of pure beaten gold. Its 7 lamps, as well as its trimming shears and trays, were made of pure gold. A talent of pure gold was used for the menorah and its various utensils. The altar of incense. The altar of incense was made of acacia wood on a square, a cubit long and a cubit wide and 2 cubits high, having horns that sprang directly from it. Its grate was on top, its walls on all 4 sides, and its horns were plated with pure gold. And a gold molding was put around it. Underneath the molding, gold rings were placed, 2 on one side, 2 on the opposite side. What are you doing with my car?
Huh?
What are you doing with my car?
It was on the desk.
You better park it back in its garage when you're done.
Okay.
Excuse me. Okay, the poles too were made of acacia wood and plated with gold. The sacred anointing oil and the fragrant incense was prepared in their pure form by a perfumer. Chapter 38, Exodus. The altar for burnt offerings. The altar for burnt offerings was made of acacia wood on a square 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. Its height was 3 cubits. At the 4 corners, horns were made that sprang directly from the altar. It was then plated with bronze. All the utensils of the altar, the pots, shovels, basins, forks, and fire pans, were likewise made of bronze. A grating, a bronze network, was made of the altar and placed around it. On the ground, half as high as the altar itself, 4 rings were cast for the 4 corners of the bronze grating as holders for the poles, which were made of acacia wood and plated with bronze. The poles were put through the rings on the sides of the altar for carrying it. The altar was made in the form of a hollow box. The bronze basin with its bronze stand was made from the mirrors of the woman who served at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The court of the tabernacle. The court was made as follows. On the south side, the hangings of the court were of fine linen twined, 100 cubits long, with 20 columns and 20 pedestals of bronze. The hooks and bands of the columns being of silver. On the north side there were similar hangings, 100 cubits long, with 20 columns and 20 pedestals of bronze. The hooks and bands of the columns were of silver. On the west side there were hangings, 50 cubits long, with 10 columns and 10 pedestals. The hooks and bands of the columns were of silver. On the east side in the court was 50 cubits. On one side there were hangings in the extent of 15 cubits, with 3 columns and 3 pedestals. On the other side, beyond the gate of the court, there were likewise hangings to the extent of 15 cubits, with 3 columns and 3 pedestals. The hanging with 3 columns and 3 pedestals. The hangings on all sides of the court were woven of fine linen twined. The pedestals of the columns were of bronze, while the hooks and bands of the columns were of silver. The capitals were silver plated, and all the columns of the court were banded with silver. At the gate of the court there was a variegated curtain woven of violet, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of fine linen twined, 20 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. In keeping with the hangings of the court, there were 4 columns and 4 pedestals of bronze for it, while their hooks were of silver, and their capitals and their bands silver-plated. All the tent pegs for the tabernacle and for the court around it were of bronze. Are you done? The amount of metal used. Yeah?
I just started the book.
The following is an account of the various amounts used on the tabernacle of the covenant, drawn up at the command of Moses by the Levites under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. However, it was Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, who made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And he was assisted by Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, who was an engraver, an embroiderer, and a weaver of variegated cloth of violet, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of fine linen. All the gold used in the entire construction of the sanctuary, having previously been given as an offering, amounted to 29 talents and 730 shekels, according to the standard of the sanctuary shekel. The silver of those of the community who were enrolled was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels. According to the standard of sanctuary shekel, 1 bekah apiece, that is a half shekel, according to the standard of the sanctuary shekel, was received from everyone who was enrolled of 20 years or more, namely 603,550 men. 100 talents of silver were used for casting the pedestals of the sanctuary and the pedestals of the veil, 1 talent for each pedestal, or 100 talents for 100 pedestals. The remaining 1,775 shekels were used for making the hooks on the columns, for plating the capitals, and for building them with silver. The bronze given as an offering amounted to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. With this were made the pedestals at the entrance of the tent meeting, the bronze altar with its bronze gratings and all the utensils of the altar, the pedestals around the court, the pedestals at the gate of the court, and all the tent pegs for the tabernacle and for the court around it. God bless. Wait.